You did everything right. Degree, career, mortgage, two incomes, retirement account with the employer match. You followed the playbook step by step, exactly the way you were told to, and it worked. So why does the money still disappear every month? Why does the net worth barely move? Why does financial stability feel like it's one bad month away from collapsing? Most people think of financial traps as obvious mistakes. Gambling, living beyond your means, carrying credit card debt for years. The middle class already knows all of that. Those aren't the traps that catch them. The traps that work on this income level are different. They don't look like traps. They look like milestones. The house purchase, the car upgrade, the professional wardrobe, the private school. Each one signals that you've arrived. Each one quietly closes the gap between what you earn and what you keep. You're not being reckless. You're being targeted by a system that reserves its most expensive traps for people responsible enough to keep paying them. The traps built for your income level don't look like traps. That's exactly what makes them so expensive and so hard to see. The first one is the one you'll resist the most because it feels like the opposite of a problem. Your salary hits the account every 2 weeks, and it feels like proof. Proof that the decisions worked, that the degree paid off, that you made the right moves. You're not rich, but you're not struggling either. The mortgage fits, the car payment fits. You can go out on weekends without once checking the balance first. That slight looseness in the budget, that feeling of margin, registers as success. Your brain files it under. Figured out. But comfort is not security. A salary that covers your expenses is not the same as a salary that builds anything. Covering costs and accumulating wealth are two completely different financial outcomes, and only one of them requires a deliberate gap between what comes in and what goes out. When that gap doesn't exist, when every dollar that arrives has already been assigned somewhere, the salary becomes a treadmill. You're moving. You're not going anywhere. The trap closes so quietly that most people never feel it shut. You earn more than your parents did. Your lifestyle is objectively better. You take vacations. The apartment is nicer. You interpret all of it as progress. But financial progress isn't measured against the past. It's measured against the gap. And the gap, for most middle-class earners, stays flat year after year while confidence quietly compounds in the wrong direction. 5 years in, the salary is higher. 10 years in, higher still. But the net worth hasn't moved the way it should have because every raise was absorbed by a slightly better version of the same life. A nicer apartment, a newer car, a vacation that cost a little more. None of it felt extravagant. All of it kept the gap at 0. Now multiply that by 2. 2 people earn, so 2 people spend. The apartment upgrades because together you can afford it. The car payment stretches because the combined income makes the math work. The mortgage approval is bigger because the bank counts both salaries. None of these decisions feel reckless. They feel like using what you have, like being practical. Here's what's actually happening. Every upgrade made possible by the second income locks that income in permanently. The mortgage doesn't shrink if someone loses a job. The car loan doesn't pause. The daycare bill arrives regardless. The lifestyle that 2 incomes built now requires 2 incomes to sustain month after month with 0 margin for anything going wrong. And something always goes wrong. A layoff, a health crisis, a career change, a new child that makes one income temporarily impossible. What felt like abundance reveals itself as a high-wire act with no net below. The household that built on 2 incomes didn't save more. It spent more proportionally than it did before. The second income didn't create security. It created a higher floor, one that can't be lowered without everything above it collapsing. You thought you were standing on 2 pillars. You were just building taller on the same unstable ground. And the worst part? You can't go back. The lifestyle ratchet only turns one direction. Once the second income becomes load-bearing, stepping away from it, even temporarily, even for something that matters, feels impossible, because it is. Then comes the house. And with the house comes the most expensive illusion the middle class carries. You own a home. You believe you have wealth. These are not the same thing. The pitch is everywhere. Buying beats renting. Real estate always goes up. Your home is your biggest asset. The bank runs the numbers, approves the loan, and suddenly the purchase feels like smart financial planning. Equity builds over time. On paper, the number looks good. The net worth calculation includes the home value, and for a moment, everything seems to be working. But equity is not money. It cannot pay for a car repair, a medical bill, or a child's tuition. Accessing it means either selling the home, which means buying another, or borrowing against it at interest, which converts what you own back into what you owe. Meanwhile, the asset demands constant payment. Property taxes climb, insurance climbs, the roof, the plumbing, the HVAC. Every system in the house ages and fails on its own schedule, not yours. Each repair draws from the same income the mortgage already claimed. And the asset is completely illiquid. You can't sell 10% of your house when cash gets tight. You can't rebalance when the local market softens. You can't move quickly when an opportunity shows up somewhere else. You are locked in, fully concentrated, fully committed, with your largest source of theoretical wealth producing nothing and costing something every single month. The middle class was told that homeownership equals wealth building. What it actually equals, in most cases, is wealth storage in a form you cannot use, inside a structure you must constantly pay to maintain. The equity is real. The access to it is not. You think you're building a foundation, you're building a vault you can't open, and every month you pay for the privilege of keeping it locked. And if you ever do build equity, the system has an answer for that too. Interest rates drop, the balance is high, the credit card debt is uncomfortable. One refinance solves everything. Lower rate, cash in hand, clean slate, except the 30-year clock resets. The equity you pulled out becomes debt secured against the home. The renovations add value until they don't. The credit cards, now paid off, start filling again. Within 2 years, most households that refinance to consolidate debt carry the same credit card balances they had before. The cycle doesn't end because the habit that created the debt was never addressed. The house becomes an ATM. The mortgage never shrinks. Every time it nears zero, someone refills it. Then the zip code makes everything more expensive. The house qualifies you for the school district. The school district justifies the price. The price brings neighbors who remodel, upgrade, and entertain at a level that becomes the new normal. HOA dues climb every few years. Property taxes in desirable areas rise faster than surrounding neighborhoods. Every year you stay, the fixed costs increase while your income stays roughly the same. You didn't just buy a house. You bought into a cost structure. And it follows you for as long as you stay. The zip code was chosen for its benefits. The cost of those benefits was never fully calculated because it wasn't a single number. It was a structure, a set of ongoing obligations that grow slowly enough to feel manageable until they don't. You think you chose the neighborhood. The neighborhood chose your budget, your social expectations, and the floor below which you're spending can never fall. Now pause, because these first traps share the same skeleton: the stable salary, the dual income, the owned home, and the right zip code. Each one looked like the responsible move. Each one felt like a rival. Each one quietly closed the gap between what you earn and what you actually accumulate. But they weren't the end. They were the foundation, the exact financial position that makes everything coming next possible. You're now leveraged. You're committed. Your monthly obligations are locked in. And that makes you the perfect customer for the systems that come next. The institutions, the industries that have been waiting for exactly these decisions to be made. And they've been waiting patiently. It starts with education, and this one is the hardest to question because it wraps itself in love. The local school doesn't feel right. The private option has smaller classes, better resources, a culture of achievement. You make the sacrifice. You tell yourself it's for them. one tuition payment becomes 12. Then high school, and the numbers double. Then college, where the expectations set by the private school pipeline lead straight to the most expensive version of the same trap. And by then, the momentum is unstoppable. You can't pull a child out of the track they've been on for 13 years. The pipeline was designed to feel irreversible. It is. A better school means better connections, better employers, better outcomes. The logic feels airtight. So the loans come out, federal first, then private. The parent co-signs. The plus loan gets stacked on top. Each semester the balance grows, but the thinking stays the same. It will pay off. The degree will make it work. It usually doesn't. Not proportionally. Studies consistently show that for most fields, graduates from less prestigious schools land similar jobs at similar salaries within 5 years. The prestige gap closes fast in the real world. What doesn't close is the debt gap. A $180,000 degree financed at 7% interest generates over $2,000 a month in payments. That's $2,000 a month before rent, before groceries, before life. The child is launched. The parents are set back by a decade. And the total cost of private K through 12 before college even starts? For 2 kids across 13 years, somewhere between $300,000 and $800,000. Most of that is financed through income diverted from retirement accounts and emergency savings. The parents work longer, retire later, and carry the quiet weight of having made the right choice while the financial picture collapses underneath it. The investment was in a story, a narrative about what the diploma would mean, what the name on the school would signal, what doors it would open. The return was a student who earns what they would have earned anyway, plus more debt and a fancier frame on the wall. Then there's retirement itself. And this trap is almost invisible because it disguises itself as discipline. It wears the language of responsibility. It feels like you're doing the right thing. And that feeling is exactly what keeps you from doing enough. You contribute just enough to capture the employer match. You stop. You're participating. You're getting free money from your employer. The box is checked. The account exists. The balance grows. You feel like a person who saves for retirement, and that identity, that feeling of being someone who has it handled, is the trap. Because the match is not a finish line. It's a floor. Capturing 3% when you need 15 doesn't mean you're saving for retirement. It means you're saving a fraction of what retirement actually costs while telling yourself the account is growing. And it is growing, just not at the rate that sustains 20 to 30 years of living without income. Financial planners consistently recommend saving 15% of gross income toward retirement. Most middle-class earners save 5 to 7%, largely because the contribution floor feels like contribution enough. Here's the math that matters. A 35-year-old saving $300 a month reaches 65 with roughly $450,000. The same person saving $900 a month reaches 65 with $1.35 million. That is the gap between a comfortable retirement and one built entirely on compromise. The match felt like progress. It was the minimum, labeled as enough. Meanwhile, the money you do invest is being quietly drained by fees most people never calculate. A portfolio of $500,000 growing at 7% over 30 years becomes roughly $3.8 million. Add a 1% annual advisory fee, and it drops to $2.9 million. That 1%, the fee that sounded like almost nothing, consumed $900,000. A 2% fee cuts the outcome to $2.2 million. That's a difference of $1.6 million on an account that started at $500,000. The investor absorbs the risk. The advisor collects the fee every year, regardless of performance, regardless of whether the market went up or down. The fee never skips a year, even when the returns do. Most managed funds don't consistently beat low-cost index funds. The data on that is not contested. The advice you're paying for, the rebalancing, the recommendations, the quarterly calls, is available at a fraction of the cost through index funds and target date accounts. That fee isn't the price of safety. It's the price of an arrangement designed to benefit the person collecting it. And while the fees drain quietly from one end, a myth suppresses your income from the other. The tax bracket fear. The belief that earning more will cost you more overall. That crossing into a higher bracket means losing money. It sounds logical. It is completely wrong. And yet it persists. Passed down in conversations, repeated at dinner tables, treated as common knowledge by people who have never once looked at how the math actually works. The tax system is marginal. A higher bracket only applies to the dollars earned above the threshold, not to everything you make. Moving from the 22% bracket to the 24% bracket on $10,000 of extra income cost you $200 more in taxes. You keep $9,800 more than you had before. The bracket went up. Your take-home went up. You are not penalized for earning more. But people decline over time. They avoid negotiating raises. They keep profitable side work deliberately small. They do this to protect money they were never going to lose. Meanwhile, the income they avoided, the raise they didn't take, the freelance project they passed on, is gone forever. You can't reclaim time. You can't go back to your boss next year and say you changed your mind about last year's raise. The window closed. The fear didn't save you anything. It cost you everything you chose not to earn. And it will keep costing you year after year for as long as the myth goes uncorrected. And then there are the traps that don't involve math at all. The ones that involve identity. This is where the psychology shifts. Everything before this was about numbers. Bad math, expensive math, but math. This one is about something harder to see. The belief that looking the part is the same as being financially stable. The job expects a certain presentation. The neighborhood expects a certain car. The social circle meets at restaurants that cost $80 a head. None of it is written down. None of it is required. And all of it costs. The wardrobe refreshed every season. The vehicle lease that matches the zip code. The coffee order that fits the office culture. The dinners that signal belonging. Each purchase is technically optional, but try opting out and see what it costs. Socially, professionally, in the quiet assessments people make about whether you belong where you say you do. This is the professional image tax. It runs silently because it's never named. It doesn't appear as a line item in the budget. It shows up in the clothing budget, the car payment, the restaurant tab. It accumulates into thousands per year spent not on enjoyment, but on maintaining a version of yourself that other people expect to see. And the cruelest part is that everyone around you is doing the same thing. They're all performing for each other. Nobody agreed to it, nobody benefits from it, but nobody can stop first. You're not investing in your career. You're renting an image at compound interest. And the landlord is everyone around you who has never once asked what it's costing you. And the final trap is the one that holds all of this together. It's the quiet belief that finance is too complicated for you to understand yourself. The tax code is dense. Investment options are overwhelming. Insurance products are deliberately opaque. So you hand it all off. The accountant, the advisor, the insurance agent. And each one costs money. And none of them are legally required to act in your interest unless you specifically demand it. You feel responsible for delegating. You feel like you're being smart about what you don't know. But what you're actually doing is paying someone else to make decisions you could learn to make yourself, and trusting that their incentives align with yours. They usually don't. The complexity is real. The helplessness is manufactured. Basic financial literacy, understanding marginal tax rates, knowing the difference between term and whole life insurance, learning how index funds work, is not advanced knowledge. It is accessible, freely available, and learnable in weeks, not years. A few hours of reading could save decades of fees. A single afternoon could dismantle the tax bracket myth forever. The middle class was never taught any of it because an informed consumer is a less profitable one. You didn't fail to understand finance. Finance was never clearly explained to you, and that gap between what you needed to know and what you were actually taught was not accidental. The middle class is the ideal financial customer, earns enough to carry debt, responsible enough to keep paying, aspirational enough to keep spending, trusting enough to not ask how the system actually works. The traps were never random. They were built for exactly this income level, this psychology, this life stage. You made reasonable choices inside a system that was designed to make those choices expensive. You weren't careless, you weren't lazy, you were the target. That's not failure. That's the system working exactly as intended.